All right, man. It's out. Man, I'm getting too old for this stuff. Whew. Man, if something happens and I end up blowing this motor or something, I know I said I wanted to do a K swap or an all motor Toyota swap. There's a guy who's built a pretty potent all motor. I think it's like 13-to-1 compression or something like that. Close to 300 horsepower. You know, because I'm not going to go back with an S series motor. It's just not. There's nothing for it. So I'm going to just have the car. I like the look of the car. I like the interior. I'm used to it. But as far as reusing another power plant from them, there's just no way. But anyway, it's out. Let me show you some stuff I got going on. Garland, Texas. Thank goodness. They're close. So if worse comes to worse, I can drive there and stick my fist in their face when no one will respond. So, and of course I'm joking, so nobody go over there and start telling people I'm threatening nobody. So anyway, get you a nice sticker. There's the invoice for it. And you know what I like? I like when they send me things like this. How about you? I mean, these are Airheads Cherry. I mean, does it make you thankful that they thought to do something like this? And look, they gave me one with a little smiley face on it. And, man, I got diabetes. What are you sending me this junk for? I paid $420 for it. Now look at that. Look how tiny that is. Now, I'm not going to lie. The unit chip isn't much bigger. You can see that in the little write-up I did on it. Let's get this stuff back in the box. We'll give that to my kids or something. Let them get diabetes. But anyway, so this is how it comes. I'm going to do this one-handed. Tamper resistant. So they want to know if it's been opened or not. So apparently it hasn't. Okay. You get you a warranty card. You better fill that out. All right, so that's it. Look at that. Now, did he give you some reference? I don't know. How about a toothbrush? No, that ain't my toothbrush. This is one I use here in the shop. But anyway, look, toothbrush compared to that. Now, this has an internal map sensor. I think it's a 3 or 4 bar. It's got the connection there for USB, and then there's your pinouts there. They give you the USB cable for it, and you get the male connector that you're going to end up terminating all your wires onto these little terminals. They've got some resistors in here too. Those come into play at some point. More stickers. And a business card. Download the latest software. Okay. And tech supported ECU masters. Now I will say, I'm not saying these guys are, you know, better so much than Unichip at responding to help. Look, here's your little diagram on the back. Look how tiny that is. But it's supposed to be able to do everything that the Unichip can do, just thereabouts. Here's your close-up of this. Now, I'm going to give you guys a wiring diagram. Keep in mind, it'll be for a 97. I think the harness is an SC1 harness, I want to say. Possibly not. It's a Frankenstein build for mine. I might have the dual overhead cam in there. Matter of fact, I think I do. Manual transmission. So the wire colors, the pin locations on the computer and all that stuff is going to be situated for that. But I'm going to try to, you know, in the event yours is one slot over or it's pink instead of green, that kind of thing, I'm just going to tell you what it does. And if you can get a wiring harness, you'll just find what cavity that exact wire is, whether it's blue, pink, yellow, or green. If it's for IAT signal or whatever, or 5-volt reference, it doesn't matter. It don't matter what color it is, as long as you get the right pin. So I'm going to have it for you. And then, of course, like I had wanted to do with the unit chip, I am going to go through and I am going to do a tuning session on it with you. I'm going to show you kind of how you get to that point of knowing where and when you need to add fuel, and just kind of, you know, stuff like that. So this is what I'm using instead of the unit chip. And like I said before, the reason I'm doing it is because this seems to have a lot of aftermarket support as far as people that have messed with it. So they're going to have a lot of insight into it that there just isn't for the unit chip. And I mean, you can search yourselves. I mean, you can see there's not much out there for the unit chip as far as the DIYer, the person that bought it, trying to wire it into their own specific vehicle. You would think that unit chip would be there to help you, but they're not. As a matter of fact, if you go to try to buy something from the website right now, everything is out of stock. And I was told in an email they're doing that because the EPA has told them that they can't sell here in the United States because of the, kind of like if you follow PFI speed, they got fined from the EPA for installing ECU proms and stuff that would alter the cars, you know, unless it's on a race car and stuff like that. I don't know the full deal on all that. I don't know. But in that same email, Unichip told me that they're working on CARB certification for their deal. And I suspect they'll probably be able to get it, but who knows when. But I guess until then, they don't want to sell in their products. And, surprise, they're not willing to talk about how to tune the thing either. So if I lived in Europe, Asia, it'd be a little bit better, a little bit easier. I'd get my car towed over one of those spots and have it figured out and even dyno tuned. But here I've got to go the route of where I've got the most help. Now these folks, like I said, are in Garland, Texas, which is up near Dallas, which is about 3-4 hours from here. Not a big deal. It's better than Oregon, okay, from Texas. So where Unichip's at. And chances are you get there and he's knock on the door and he's hiding behind the table in there. So anyway, I'm going to use this rather. Now, what I will do, and where there is support for the unit chip, like I'd mentioned, is the rear mount that I'm going to put on that Tacoma. And I'll take you guys through that too. Although I'm a OSG, I'm going to move on and kind of branch out and do some stuff. I did post a Scion exhaust video. That's still running well and doing well. But at any rate, I just want to let you guys know that, you know, things do change. And so I know that there's the Mega Squirt. I know that even ECU Masters, these guys tried to talk me into a full standalone. Again, I'm not interested in a full standalone. Not at this stage of the game. I've done that before. It was the Electromotive Tech 2. I did it. I was successful with it. I drove it from Houston to Spring Hill, Tennessee when I went to the second meet up there. Turboed, no doubt, no less. So I've done that. I don't want full standalone. I just want to let the stock computer do its thing on all areas other than when I need a little extra fuel and some timing adjustments when I'm under boost. That's all. That's all I want. And so there's a lot of people out there using this, and so and they're having success with it. It's not perfect. Nobody's saying it's perfect, and it's not going to give you every facet or feature that a standalone could. Fuel Tech and all these other ones, I get it. They're great. You know, HP tune, wonderful. Knock yourself out if that's what you want to do. But I don't want to sit there and program and learn all that crap again. I've done it. Okay, I just want something simple. Throw it in there. This car is not something that it's going to be a weekend car, something I enjoy, I want to beat up on. I'm not looking to invest a whole lot of tuning time on the darn thing. So that's where we're at. And so that's what I'm going to use. The Digital ECU Tuner 3 Plus. Make sure you get the 3 Plus. It's got several other features to it. We'll go through all that. I just wanted to show you what I got. All right, moving on to the next thing needing to be corrected during this final fitment. So this is the flex tubing, and it's important to do because this part of the header is the bottom portion, obviously, the downpipe. Here's your flange, and of course it two pipes down into the one. So at this point here, there's a flex tube, and then if you're smart, so you can avoid cracking of any headers that you use, you're going to want to put a brace on here that connects to one of the bolts that's kind of like that kidney shaped or hourglass shaped bracket that bolts between the engine and transmission. And so this is welded on here to give me that support link right there. This is the wideband O2 sensor that I have built into the system. Of course, the factory O2 is on the 4-pipe portion. So it goes all the way down here. This is the first interface for this one. And so this flex tubing, you can see when I brace it on something up here, see how it's all bunched up here? It was leaking pretty aggressively from here. It would be a problem under normal circumstances, but a very serious problem with boost with a rear mount turbo, because I was losing tons of boost through here. Okay. And I had wrapped this, to keep heat from escaping, because I had it wrapped before and I had it wrapped after, but not here. And I said, well, I'm losing heat here too, so I wrapped it. This is the second flex tube, and it's an Amazon one, so quality is suspect, but you can see it's just all pinched up here, and I mean, it's leaking pretty badly. And the reason they want you to do this is of course, this is bolted directly to the cylinder head, and you have the whole pipe length going to the back of the car. Well, this needs room to kind of flex around a little bit as you're going down the road. Of course, you have your rubber hangers and things like that along your pipe towards the back of the car, but here they want to be able to have this part, and this little bracket here is what stabilizes it on the motor, so that all this stays together, so it's moving all together, where it allows this back portion here to end up having some ability to flex and move around. So since these haven't worked out real well for me, I'm going to try this one. I'm going to see what this can do. So of course, because the length of this is not the same, I'm going to cut it right where I've got some good weld area here to cut. I've got to cut just shy of this bracket so I can keep it. And then I'm gonna get an extra piece of tubing, so I'll need probably just a small section to go from here to here, and then another small section to go from here to right here. I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to have to put this on the car first, mount this back up once the engine's swapped out or pulled out and serviced. Then I can weld all this stuff here together. So, because you want this bolted onto the car, this bolted onto the quick disconnect, that type of V-band, the V-band clamp. And then I'll be able to better position the pipe in this flex tube, so I can take as much stress out of this area here as possible. Because if you look at this, the way it's mounted, if I hold this up the way it might be on the car horizontally to us, pipe goes down. Look at the kick up. Now, I didn't weld this thing on here, and I didn't even think to tell the guy, but look at the kick up on this thing. It goes, nah, nah. So that's probably the issue, because it puts such a bind on this back end back here. And for the most part, my exhaust, it's not solid mounted, like with steel brackets and such, but it has basic this type of mount. So this is bolted to the underside here, and of course this is rubber. And then I got this piece here basically going into here, or it might go in like that, but at any rate this goes through there, and that's what's supporting it. So there is some level of rubber mount here, but it's pretty tight. It's not like those oval shaped rubber mounts that you got, your exhaust dangling by underneath there. So there isn't a whole lot of movement ability like this. So when the engine torques, it turns in its mount. This odd angle, coupled with the fact that this pipe is almost solid mounted, that kicks this up, and I bet you that's what killed it. And of course, it probably wasn't a high quality anyway. So yeah, I'm going to try this and see what happens. So with my crappy tack welds, I've been playing with that welder, and I ended up speeding up the wire feed. My thoughts were I wasn't getting very much weld put down, for the length of time that I was holding it there. So I said, okay, well, I must need to speed up the wire feed. So I did, and a couple times it looked okay. I mean, obviously these are just supposed to be tacks to hold it, because when I get down there, I'm going to need to put the downpipe back on, connect this flange to the V-band, then I'll know how much between here and here where I got to put things, and if I don't want to put a bind on it. So depending on the way all this lays out, I may have to kind of angle this cut here or whatever. But the wire feed thing, I don't know. I mean, I've just got it tacked on here enough to where someone that can weld. The trick is, I just got one of these little cheap Harbor Freight welders, and there's no gas to it. I feel like if I had a gas welder, I could probably do a lot better. But the investment there, unless I was 100% sure that was the case, I don't want to do the investment and then still do a crappy job and still only be able to tack with it. Because for what I use this welder for is mainly just to tack it, just to tack things so somebody else can weld it. But so what I did here was the pipe diameter was the same here as it was over here, obviously. And then I just beat it down into this recess here where these two pipes come together. With like a ball peen hammer, just kind of hammered it in there, got it close for whoever's going to weld it. They can weld that, and of course tacked it. So yeah, that's coming along. Whenever I put the engine back in, I'll put the downpipe on and get all this squared away, and hopefully this will last over the mesh one. It's out this time. I broke my little gasket here. This was hard to. This came with the header, the OBX header. I can probably find another one. Sometimes these are kind of hard to find. You can find them in just this general shape, but the diameter of the hole will be different. The offset here will be different. The holes will be off a little bit. So kind of like what I've always done, I'm just going to coat this thing real good on both sides with some copper spray and put it on here. A lot of people, and I've done this before with my turbo housing back there, I didn't use a gasket at all. I just used that copper spray, and it held, no exhaust leaks whatsoever. So I guess if I didn't have this, I could try that. It depends on how off this flange is from seating smoothly. So, but yeah, so I'm going to use the gasket, and I'm just going to coat it with that copper spray. I'm by no means doing a wire tuck on this thing at all, but this spaghetti mess, I'm going to clean up, get all this old wire loom type stuff off, wrap it with that clothy type tape, and then some of that, it almost reminds me of a Chinese finger trap material. I'm going to wrap that around here and clean it up and make it not so bulky and stuff, but it's just a mess. So this is a before, I guess you could say. So I've never used this intake here before. I had it mounted up on the engine before, and at that time it was going to be a full drag car, and so a lot of the ideas of what might be needed to incorporate it into a street setup never really came to mind. So there was some oversight, short-sightedness, I guess you should say. Does anybody see a brake booster port or a PCV valve port on this thing? Like here for the brake booster, and of course here for the PCV. This, by the way, in case you don't know, this is a PCV off of I think it's a Mazda 6, the turbo, because there's a good check valve here, so it keeps boost from feeding back this way into the manifold. So anyway, so I'm just going to think of a way. I thought about just obviously taking, say, like an aluminum fitting, and I'm going to find a spot on here that makes sense to do it, but I'm going to cut this part off here, because this is like a bulkhead fitting for like fuel and whatnot, but it's aluminum. So I'm going to cut that off so I can put like a 90 on here, and I'm going to try to just think of a way that I can make this a lot better, because this turns up because it's lower than what the PCV valve is. So I'm going to try to remedy that. I'm going to have to tee off if I'm going to retain use of this vacuum block, which I probably am. And then do I put the vacuum block here or back here? I know the brake booster I'm going to put it on the very bottom, because if you look at the height difference here, so the plenum is going to be even with the runners down here, the initial runner. So the brake booster port is way up here. So I was going to put it on the back side over here, 90ing down, but I think I'm just going to put a port on the very bottom, and that hose, I'll just cut that hose and it'll still have its 90 leg on there to position up underneath there. The only drawback, I think, that might be an issue and might make me put it elsewhere, I don't want it low to where any, I don't know, it's kind of like the idea with an O2 sensor. You don't want to put an O2 sensor at the bottom of the pipe, like at the 6 o'clock position. You want it up 3/4, say like at the 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock position, or 12 o'clock, something, just so that, you know, in an exhaust system you do get some moisture accumulate inside there. That's why sometimes you'll see your tailpipe kind of spitting water, and that can get on your oxygen sensor, so you don't want to put it on the lower portion of the pipe. But I wonder if that might also apply here. So I'll show you what I end up doing. Well, I've come to the conclusion that I'm a pretty hard-headed kind of fella. But it's like whenever I come up on a challenge, rather than just go the easy way, I tend to pick the tough way. And it don't make it any easier if it's a Saturn. So this is our, this isn't such an issue here. I'm going to make that work. That's going to be okay. The issue, so here's our port for the intake vacuum, right? So this goes over and feeds this log, which boost gauge, fuel pressure regulator, some other things that need, you know, a vacuum signal or boost signal. And of course then it tees off and comes over here to this PCV valve that goes into the valve cover. So the trick is in placement of the nipple on the other intake that I'm using. I'm just trying to think it through and make a good decision so that it works, obviously, is the number one, but it actually looks okay as well. And the second issue is, when I had originally designed this intake, it had a different throttle body on it. It had a different fuel rail on it. But I'm not sure if it's because it's the Power Master and it's a bit larger. I don't know. I don't think it is. This is that Power Master alternator, so it's put out a lot more bolts and whatnot. So I've like I said, I was going to swap over the pulley from just the underdrive pulley to the regular pulley, because my lights at a stop, even though I have the LEDs and all this, I got LED front to back on it, the lights would dim, especially if I had, you know, some loud music on. And of course, you rev your engine up and lights get bright. So I don't really want to go into any kind of capacitors and whatever, because I don't even know if that'd fix my problem. But I do know the underdrive alternator pulley might have been contributing to it. So I just swapped back to this factory or the stock type pulley. So hopefully that'll fix my problem. I won't know until I get it back in the car. But here's the situation. When I was mocking this thing up on my race engine, I knew this was so low that it was going to hit the alternator. So obviously you can still use the retaining bolt down here. Right here, that's the long bolt that goes on the shelf here. But then this connection point here to here, look, because if I don't, then this is going to hit. And I've kind of clocked it to where it has just a little bit of a gap in there. So what I did before was I just made a bracket to go from here to here, and then I tried to do a custom drive. Just, you know, you got to use a 5 rib belt. So I just went belt after belt after belt, and I found the one that would work. But that was when I didn't have AC. Well, this one's going to have AC and power steering. So I'm going to have to hunt for a belt. Usually when you're going for a 5-rib belt for something that you might need to add several inches to, they don't really have a 5-rib for something like that. They next size up, they figure, okay, it's a bigger engine, like a V6 or V8, so they go to the KO60 belt numbers, with 6 is 6 rib rather than 5. So I'm going to have a challenge finding that. I'll find out one way or the other, but I can't really do the fitment until I get it back in the car. But in the meantime, I'm going to use there's a special type of like a connection, I forget the name of it. It's got spherical ends on it. Y'all may know, my mind's not there today. But anyway, I'm going to mock up that bracket to go from here to here, then I'll have to find a belt to fit it. But the second thing, or third rather, as I noted, on the original design, I had a custom fuel rail made by my friends, the same people that made this, RJ Fabrication. And so with this being the return style fuel rail, you have your regulator here, so the fuel comes in here. There's a tube that goes from, excuse me, there's mowers in the yard next door, so if you can't hear me, I'm trying to talk a little bit louder. There's a tube that goes all the way down the length of here, then stops short, and then the fuel comes out and then does like an encirclement and comes back this way, and then it goes up into the fuel pressure regulator right there, goes back, there's your return right there. Well, obviously when I had it before, this was the fuel rail that I had. This was the one that they made for me. It's an AN, it's got AN return right there. And when he built it, I had him, just because, I'm not an engineer, but whenever I'm trying to do this stuff, I try to retain or kind of just duplicate what the engineers did in the event it matters. Okay, and I just want to say, man, all these years later, Jeremy over at R&J, man, they did such a fantastic job. Look at those little welds, those little tiny welds on there. The guy's top notch, man. He's just a great guy. Look at that. But anyway, he built this for me, and I really do appreciate it. But if you look inside here, you'll see that tube. You see a tube in there? And that tube goes all the way down. Now, I have ran this. I've actually used it on my original turbo car back in 99 when I went to Spring Hill to that second reunion, the SPS rally. I had a turbo back then, and I had went ahead and rigged this to work. The problem with, I didn't really want to try to mess with the AN fittings and all this stuff and try to make it work with what I had. I'm looking for, hit it and get it. I was just wanting to do this swap, make this work, because like I said, we're going to have to rig this. Deal with that. I've got this thing out. I'm going to change the oil pan gasket. I'm going to put in EGT. I got a bunch of stuff. I got to put in that new clutch disc. I'm going to swap over to the single overhead cam transmission that I have, but I got to open it up to get the Phantom Grip green spring in there. That's the strip spring. So a lot to do, but this is just something I didn't anticipate. But so I'm trying to use the same rail that I had before, but look, it's contacting the manifold. So I thought about, okay, see, my mind starts racing, and I start saying, okay, no, that's no problem. I'll just take this, I'll grind down this part here where I have it blacked a little bit, and that'll give the line enough room to get inside there and snap on. But what it made me do was, if you look and you can see, you might be able to see a spacer right here. There's one there, and of course on the third point there's one inside there. You probably can just barely see it right in between here. So, but now the injectors, instead of being at a nice natural angle, they're kind of up a little bit, and I don't know if that's going to affect the way the fuel squirts in there. I doubt it, but still, over time, the heat that this might generate with this being plastic and that being fuel, it gives me the kind of the heebie-jeebies. So what I think I'm going to have to do is one of two things. I can either re-implement this which would give me my clearance, because now with this being the return side, it's not going to be hitting right here on this like it does on here. But of course, then that omits the stock fuel pressure regulator, which isn't a big deal because I'm still using that veggie rising rate with my new system that I'm putting on here. But at any rate, I can either use this rail or this returnless fuel system rail. So I'd have stock fitment, things like that. It doesn't have a regulator for return, a stock regulator. All my stock lines would fit up, and I could then use the veggie regulator as in and out. It would return fuel to the stock line just like I have it set up right now. All I'm doing is I'm taking this regulator out of the mix, right? So I'm just trying to think what would make the most sense to do. I mean, I could do something with this, but again, I'm still using the veggie regulator as my regulator. So I don't know. Y'all will see what I end up doing, obviously. But this line, the benefit of this, I say the benefit, if you look, this was another reason that I used this setup, was the inlet and the inlet, the sizes are the bigger. This one's bigger, so it could flow more fuel, obviously, less restriction. So I don't know, we'll see. So on the PCV side of stuff, I ended up cutting off that part I said I was going to cut off. I left a little shelf there, so when I drill the hole, it'll go in there and seat real nice, and then I'll get my guy to weld it on. But so normally this thing was mounted like this, and of course it bends down to get a hold of the nipple coming off of the intake manifold. But I'm thinking if I turn it this way, let me get all this other crap off here. Maybe have it come shoot straight down like this. Because the problem is, see how it just wobbles in there? And it's not an issue because when it's sucking, it's okay. When it's sucking, when this manifold's sucking vacuum pulling through. And of course, when boost comes up and tries to go back this way, the check valve catches it. So it doesn't have to be super duper tight in there. But as I'm looking at this thing on the side, I could do like a straight shot down like this. This isn't going to be an issue to worry about. And then if I use one of these two rails, it still isn't going to be an issue. So I'm thinking maybe not this 90 here, this fitting, but maybe just put it just like right here, maybe. Let me go see something here. There we go, something like that. Because like I said, this won't be here anymore. So we can move this up, and this can sit kind of maybe like this. I'll bring this hose further down. And then it's just a straight shot there. And then as far as the rest of the manifold needs, it's a good question. As a quick aside, this one right here, I could chop this off, the threads, and then underneath here, right about where it would normally be, shoot, maybe not. I gotta think of some other way, because I really don't want to have it down like that to where any debris or whatever can get inside there and go over to the brake booster. Well, just tossing some ideas around. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. See that rail, you see that little tube inside there? See? So yeah. So I just try to mimic it. But here's the returnless one. Of course, that's no surprise, you guys seen a returnless fuel rail before. But there's no fitment issue here. It bolts right up. I don't have to use any spacers. I should have the direct stock feed for it. It won't interfere with anything I've got hooked up here. It won't interfere with the coolant. And if we swing this down, move these injectors over. And we got our little, you see how that works? We'll have it right there, just like that. That's nice and clean and simple. And then as far as this log, I might be able to feed this with one of these ports here. I had put some things in here, I forgot what I used them for, but I can use that port as a source feed for this. Yeah. Anyway, working right along, trying to get this done as quickly as I can so I can get back out there on the road. The engine's out, so obviously we'll be power washing, getting that fabric. I'm going to be obviously painting the engine bay, trying to get that all spruced up. I was supposed to have a guy come over here today and wrap my daughter's hood. It had just had clear coat. It's an old red Honda Civic. I was going to have him wrap it, and while he was here I was going to get him to quote me the color and the kind of look I'm wanting for this, to see if we could work on getting this wrapped. I'm still debating which way I go on it. Of course, just checking this thing now that I've got it on the car and seeing how it's all going to set up. This is the coolant coming out of the cylinder head, goes down here. This hooks up to the hose that's going into the heater core. And then underneath here we got this port. It's going to be shooting back over to the reservoir. So everything's clearing. I mean, if you look here, it's got plenty of room underneath here. It's perfect. And then over here, yeah, it's got plenty of room to make a straight shot over to there. I think it's going to go out. Let me take a look here. Yeah, so it's going to come out right here, right in this area, right here, in between. And then it'll get up on into the reservoir return. So that'll work out good. So these updates is just to show that I'm not laying down dying somewhere. I wasn't going to update as much. Just, you know, next time I was going to show you the painted bay and all that. But I just want to show some of the progress, because it's not so much tooting my horn or trying to get someone to celebrate me. But what if you were to do something like this? Maybe as you're seeing me kind of stumble, you'd say, oh man, why doesn't he just do that? And then you've already thought it through and you're good to go. So just kind of taking you with me through it. So I hope you're enjoying it. It's just something to kill your time with until one of your more favorite YouTubers posts something.